What went into the decision to DFA DJ?
Tough decisions. In the end, it's ultimately comes down to how this roster sits and what's best. But as you want to provide your manager with enough chess moves to deal with on a day in and day out basis in the game, and obviously once we got DJ LeMahieu, who's been a great player here, for a long time, and once he came back, we gave him the lane at second. He had communicated all the way back from the wintertime that third base had become now an issue for him physically, and that second and first would be the more likely area. So that's why in the rehab assignment you saw he played all second base, and so that's why when he came up here, we gave the runway to see what it would look like, to see if this dimension with the current setup was going to be workable. And so we moved Jazz over. Jazz was willing to move over to third to like he did last year, and to try to give a lane there to see what we saw on the offense and the defensive side with DJ. And at some point you'd make some tough decisions. You got to look at it. Booney was obviously laser focused on trying to predict as we move forward that this is the best way to go, and he made a decision in Citi Field that he was going to move Jazz back to second base, and that kind of left us in a situation in conversations with DJ about, well, what's next, and is third a legitimate option or is it not a legitimate option, and if it's not a legitimate option, then where does it leave us, and so those conversations continued, and at any point we could have just kept rolling with it, but I met with DJ last night. I met with DJ again today, and I just ultimately made a decision that best for the roster configuration moving forward. And I'll give you an example. So, like for tonight's game, if Peraza, if Booney wants to pinch hit for Peraza later in the game, currently the alternative to play third would be Escara, and that's just not something I could leave comfortably. And so as we walked through it, talked through it, ultimately made a tough decision, and that led us to make the roster change today.
Brian, you and Aaron have mentioned in different ways, like he's not physically able to play third. What does that mean? Is something wrong with his arm? Why? I mean, he's been a good third baseman before. I know he's older, but what specifically would prohibit him from playing third?
I don't have a specific answer. I just can relay, what he would convey. That when we signed him, remember it was a great opportunity for us. We got a player that I publicly said was an everyday utility guy. He can play third, short, second, first. He mostly obviously third, second, and first, and we were going to have him play every day at just various positions, and it was going to be great, and it was. But obviously, since the injury, he shared with me last winter. So when he went on the IL, I can't remember last year what point it was, if it was August or what have you. He got an injection into the hip, and and then did the rehab from that, and he may have since then had another injection. So I assume it's hip related, but but specifically he was always just sharing that the recovery was really difficult. The physical toll on him to tee up at that position was a problem, and so therefore that position is a problem now when it wasn't before. But obviously the last few years we've had a lot of injuries that we've been dealing with, and he's been fighting through, and I know he strongly felt that the best way for him moving forward was to try to solely stay on the right side of the infield, and even as an example, he played third in spring and popped the calf muscle, and so I know he was linking that a little bit too, as like, as an example of I cannot withstand physically playing this position, the left side of the infield for some reason. It really did affect his recovery and something he struggled with. And so he was openly sharing that, which complicates, the roster fit moving forward. We were still hopeful that maybe we could, get him in a better position physically where we could try that. And he was never not, I wouldn't say he's unwilling to still make the attempt and maybe spell over there, but, it was something that he was without a doubt sharing that he was steering clear of to the extent he could, because like anything else, he's got a lot of pride. He's a great player. He wants to contribute to the team. He loves this game, loves this organization. But he felt that was an avenue that was no longer a realistic avenue, and that kind of ties our hands a little bit more moving forward. And again, you start running through permutations as we try to figure out, best way to line up on a daily basis, whether it's, with the starting lineup or, what bullets, your manager is going to shoot, from the bench in game when things play out a certain way. And so ultimately, after a lot of conversations last night and into the day, and just kind of made a judgment call of, because there's no right time to do any moves, and but just felt like this probably isn't going to be the best circumstance moving forward then, and I definitely didn't want to put ourselves in a position where we're cut short in the game, and with the flexibility that you want your manager to have. So I designated him for assignment today.
Given the toll that injuries have taken on him in recent years, was this a move that you considered doing in the offseason before this?
There was no pressure point. Obviously, we're invested in him. His contract's through next year. Yeah, they always have hope. He fought every step of the way to put himself in a position to reclaim, where he was, and obviously be an everyday player, and getting the time off from the end of last year with the injection in the hip, and then the due diligence and the work coming into spring training. I think he felt good that he was in a better place, and obviously we're hopeful. We're hopeful that, all right, let's see what this looks like. And then we lost him. I think it was the very first game. He pulled the calf, and and then obviously had to wait for him to recover and then get the rehab games going. And the rehab games are tough because we kept getting rainouts and stuff like that during that process. But, so it's kind of like waiting to see what we're going to see, because it's been the last few years of injuries and not sure, where that was going to leave us. So there were a lot of I guess the gray area of timing, which is when is enough time that you can make a true judgment here, that this is at least what it is here currently as this current roster is constructed, and this is how it's going to play, and is that in our best interest moving forward, obviously, or not, and so again, just that's what led into the decision I made today.